for this important speech on the future of education in America. I'm honored to be starting things off today. I'm currently a senior in high school, and I've been fortunate to be able to learn in person this year. I'm incredibly grateful for the hard work of the school administration and teachers, especially during the pandemic. This year, I've enjoyed leading clubs, being actually in class with my friends, and being part of a strong learning community. After I graduate, I look forward to studying mathematics in college. Now, I'm honored to introduce U.S. Secretary of Education, Miguel Cardona. Secretary Cardona has dedicated his career to serving students, educators, and families. As an elementary school teacher, school principal, district administrator, and most recently, as Commissioner of Education for the state of Connecticut. He has embraced his work as secretary with great passion over the past 10 months, understanding the challenges that students, teachers, and parents are going through. In addition to being Secretary of Education, Secretary Cardona is also the proud father of 2 high schoolers and the husband of another educator, Marisa. Please join me in giving Secretary Cardona a round of applause. Mr. Secretary.
Thank you, Adam. And Rebecca, Adam's mother, thank you for being here. I remember being 5 years old, walking into my first day of kindergarten at John Berry Elementary School in Meriden, Connecticut. I was so nervous. At that time, I was just learning English. I felt like I didn't belong. It turned out to be a horrible day. My mom had to pick me up early from the nurse's office that day. I'm not sure if it was the feeling of being overwhelmed, being around bigger kids who spoke English a lot better than me, or maybe a feeling that the challenge ahead was just too great. But I recall being overcome with an overwhelming fear. My young mother walked from home a few blocks away to come get me from school. And on the way home, she told me it'd be okay. She told me that school would open doors for me to be able to be anything I want to be. Sarita, I know you're watching. You were right. I also remember a year and a half ago, it seems like forever ago, when I was serving as the Commissioner of Education in Connecticut, sitting in my basement in my makeshift office. At that time, we were deciding how to reopen schools for in-person learning, knowing that excessive school closures would worsen opportunity gaps for marginalized students, but also knowing that haphazard and sloppy reopening would increase the health risk to those I served. During those moments, there were concerns that the challenge was just too great. Like my first day of school, it also seemed impossible. An overwhelming fear made many people nervous about reopening. Yet, remarkably, we did. And today, just over 1 year into President Biden's term, we know what to do. While I recognize the daily challenges our students, our parents, and educators still face, we have better tools now to keep schools safe and thriving amidst a pandemic. And while we must stay cognizant and supportive of the challenges our heroic educators face daily to keep our schools open today, we must also simultaneously meet this moment in our country's history. A moment to reimagine education to our shared ideals, one where all children can succeed. Like my first day of school or working to reopen schools over the last 2 years, we have a daunting and important task ahead of us. One that we are prepared to tackle head on at the Department of Education. We must level up our entire system of education from pre-kindergarten through adult education in this country. And this is our moment. It's our moment not only to keep schools open, but also to address the inequities that have existed in our school systems for far too long. It's our moment to finally make education the great equalizer, the force that can help every student thrive, no matter their background, no matter their zip code, their circumstance, or the language they speak at home. But I'm here today to say that reopening schools and keeping them open, while it's critical, it's insufficient. Our hardest and most important work lies ahead. It'll be what we're judged against. And I want to be very, very clear. As educators and leaders, we're either closing educational opportunity gaps or making them worse with the decisions we're going to make in the next coming months and years. Our students' success is at stake. Not just the students we serve today, but also those who have yet to be born. Our country's strength is at stake. Our status in the world is at stake. Our task is not only to improve our education system from where it was before the pandemic, but also to take bolder action to elevate it, to lead the world. How we do this together is what I want to focus on today. And I'd like to take some time to outline my vision as your Secretary of Education for moving forward together. We must push with the same urgency as our president did in getting this country back open. There are a few actions that I believe are among the most important. First, we must make sure that our students thrive during and as we recover from the pandemic. As I noted earlier, safely reopened schools is just the baseline. It's not good enough. We must make up for lost time. Our schools must offer increased access to mental health supports for students, wraparound programs, meaningful and authentic parent and family engagement, and interventions for those students who felt the impact of the pandemic much more bluntly than others. You see, missed instruction has affected millions of students. We must ensure that these students receive the most resources and supports. Let's come together to ensure that all children in all schools feel connected and supported. I'd like to see every high school student in America participate in at least one co-curricular activity in their school, whether that's being part of an arts program or a theater program, athletics, or an after-school club. All kids must be seen. All kids must feel connected. And all kids must hear their names in school every day. Thanks to President Biden and Vice President Harris's leadership in passing the American Rescue Plan and providing $130 billion, schools have the resources to not only stay open, but to invest in recovery. We moved with urgency, and I'm proud to say that 100% of the funds are now in the state's hands for use to support our students, our families, and our educators. Across the country, cities and rural communities alike can use these unprecedented resources to invest today in strategies we know work to help our kids catch up and succeed. Strategies like targeted, intensive tutoring, after-school programming, summer program to meet the needs of our students and the demands of our economy. Across our country, entire communities, including parents, educators, and students themselves, they should be brainstorming together about how these resources can be deployed to help the schools do this important work. And I'd like to challenge all of our district leaders to set a goal of giving every child that fell behind during the pandemic at least 30 minutes per day, 3 times a week, with a well-trained tutor who is providing that child with consistent, intensive support. We cannot expect classroom teachers to do it all. Districts have the American Rescue Plan funds available to them today to invest in these efforts. Our schools must also embed mental health supports into their day-to-day operations in new and innovative ways. Every child must have access to a mental health professional, whether through their school or through a community-based organization. And districts should use American Rescue Plan funds now to hire these critical staff and create more partnerships. For example, I visited a high school last year where every student had a learning period dedicated to social emotional well-being or mental health supports in their daily schedule. Let's see more of that. And let's work to meet the president's goal of doubling the number of school counselors, social workers, and mental health professionals in our schools. Importantly, we cannot let a lack of mental health or other supports lead to exclusionary school discipline practices for students who are suffering from trauma. We cannot let that happen. It's time to reimagine holistic support for every student every day and reimagine schools and school systems designed to meet the needs of our learners today. Next, to improve and elevate our education system, we must unapologetically address opportunity and achievement gaps that are pervasive in our country. This means acknowledging that many of the students who have been underserved during the pandemic are the same students who have had to deal with barriers to high-quality education since well before COVID-19. We can't lose this moment, this chance for a reset in education, by going back to the same pre-pandemic strategies that didn't address inequities for Latinos, for Black, for Native students, for students from low-income backgrounds or students from rural communities, for students with disabilities or students experiencing homelessness, or for English learners. Instead, let's do what America does best. Let's turn crisis into opportunity. It means increasing funding for Title I schools, those serving communities most in need, and in many cases, those who are hardest hit by the pandemic. It means increasing funding for the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, so that every eligible child with a disability can access a free, appropriate public education. It means not allowing for a culture of low standards or low expectations for some students and some families over others. It means providing every family and every child the opportunity to start out on an equal playing field by providing free, universal preschool and affordable, high-quality, inclusive childcare. It means utilizing rescue plan funds to ensure in the coming years that every child can read by 3rd grade. Let's hold ourselves accountable to this. It means more meaningful and authentic parent and family engagement. As a former school principal, I knew that partnering with parents was critical to our school's growth. Especially now during a pandemic, engaging parents' voices in this process of recovery and addressing disparities is not only important, it's necessary. All parents' voices must be heard. It means honoring native languages and cultures, as well as gifts and talents that our students bring. It means funding and pushing for additional special education teachers and investing in educators and paraprofessionals, in their well-being and in recruiting and retaining them. Because when we invest in our teachers, we invest in our students. For the past 2 years, educators, school personnel, and school and district leaders have worked courageously to ensure that we went from 46% of our schools open full-time in person 1 year ago to over 96% of our schools open full-time in person today. That's despite Delta and Omicron surges. So let's not just talk about honoring educators. Let's make sure they're treated with the respect and the dignity they deserve. This means a livable wage. It means ongoing professional learning and development, supportive working conditions, and a work environment where their voices are welcome as critical partners in our work to improve education. Moving forward, it's on us to make sure education jobs are the ones educators don't want to leave, and that people from all backgrounds want to pursue. All of these goals are within our reach, and we keep talking about it, but do we have the will to make it happen? This cannot be done with federal resources alone. We need our states and our districts to take a really hard look at their own ways of funding schools, and for those leaders to make difficult decisions to fix broken systems that perpetuate inequities in our schools across the country. And finally, to elevate our education system to lead the world, we must transform education beyond high school so that it works for everybody and so that it leads to well-paying, rewarding careers. It is unacceptable in the United States to have a post-secondary education system that further separates the haves and the have-nots. It's also unacceptable to be burdened with unmanageable loan debt for several decades just because you chose to go to college. Today, too many talented Americans are choosing against enrolling in higher education due to the fear of debt and the feeling that college is just out of reach. We maintain a posture of neglect when post-secondary education is out of reach for students and their families. This is un-American. That's why our administration has already canceled $15 billion in student loan debt, more than any other administration, and that's only in our first year in office. And we're committed to supporting every student loan borrower when they transition back into repayment. No one should be forced to make a payment they cannot afford. To fix the system, we also overhauled the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program. So public servants who have paid for 10 years can finally get the loan relief they deserve. And I'm really proud that as of last week, our changes have made 70,000 doctors, nurses, veterans, service members, teachers, and others in public service fields eligible for $5 billion in loan relief. But we're not done yet. We'll work with Congress to make long-term improvements to the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program. We're also committed to holding programs, colleges, and universities accountable. We brought back the enforcement unit at Federal Student Aid to crack down on institutions that defraud our students. And because we need to make sure that schools that focus on career programs aren't leaving students with mountains of debt and without good job opportunities, we've begun the process to create a strong gainful employment rule. Students will not be taken advantage of for financial gain. In all that we do here at the Department of Education, we will be student-centered. As we work to make colleges more affordable and accountable, we must also make them more accessible. That means creating stronger college and career pathways between our pre-K through grade 12 systems and our 2- and 4-year colleges and our workforce partners so that our systems lead the world. To get this done, our high schools must evolve more quickly. Each high school in the country should have at least one career counselor so that every high schooler has great options when they graduate. Today is a new day and it requires new thinking. At the Department of Education, we'll work with our partners in the Departments of Commerce, the Department of Labor, to develop career preparation programs that will run through our community colleges. We'll continue to invest in colleges that serve underrepresented groups, and we will prioritize and increase grants from the Department of Education that allow any American at any age or any point in their career to pursue higher education. Like Ruth. I met Ruth this summer in Michigan. Ruth is a middle-aged woman working hard just to make ends meet. She had some health issues that forced her to go to the hospital during the pandemic. That experience of being in the hospital, it opened her eyes to a future in healthcare. As she told me, after seeing what our country is going through, I want to live the rest of my life helping others who are going through health issues. That was Ruth. Using a Pell Grant, she's returning to school to be a nurse practitioner. Good luck, Ruth. It's never too late for any American to go back to school. And I challenge states and districts to rethink the link across education systems from pre-K to grade 12 to higher education so more people like Ruth can reignite their passions and discover new ones. At the Department of Education, we'll do better as a service agency. This is happening as we continue to get out into the field. I visited over 90 stops in 25 states in the last 12 months. And I recognize that our field is in great need. It needs a Department of Education that supports them. It needs a Department of Education that values them, that leads with students at the center. And with me as Secretary of Education, that's what you're going to get. We're going to continue to listen and engage partners in our work through intentional collaboration. Intentional collaboration. This collaboration includes students, parents, families, educators, and leaders across sectors, because we won't be able to accomplish any of this if we try to do it alone. Through proactive webinars and meetings since March, we've listened to nearly 8,000 parents, thousands of educators, leaders, and students. And my goals and my actions today are driven by what we're hearing. It's time to level up education in this country. We'll also remove silos between systems designed to work together to serve the same families across America. That means strengthening our partnerships with the colleagues at the Department of Labor, Housing and Urban Development, Health and Human Services, and Environmental Protection to support children, their families, and entire communities. We'll work so that all schools can truly be the hubs of their community, where students and families are connected to the resources and services they need. You see, we're all on the same team, and we serve the same families. If a child is hungry, lacks stable housing, or lives in unhealthy conditions, their bandwidth for learning will be diminished. It's all hands on deck in the Biden-Harris administration. To my colleagues in the field, I know you're tired. I know you're stretched. You probably feel how I felt when I was trying to reopen schools during the first part of the pandemic. It truly felt impossible. I see you and I understand what you're going through. It will get better. And it will soon translate to our best opportunity for much needed transformational shifts in education. And while we didn't sign up to serve during a pandemic, we did sign up to serve students. Your work today will have a greater impact on our country because of the time in which you are serving. To the educators across the country, thank you. We stand together at a moment when our actions as educators will determine our country's standing in the world, when our students look up to us for more than just academics, and when we can collectively lead our nation's healing. Let's move America forward with a greater sense of urgency, a greater sense of passion and purpose. I chose to speak today because despite our country being in the midst of a surge, I know our children cannot wait any longer. They've suffered enough. And this is our moment. This is our moment to truly reimagine education. This is our moment to lift our students, to lift our education system, and to lift our country to a level never before seen. As the great Congressman Lewis said, if not us, then who? And if not now, when? For the students that are in this room today, it was important for me to have students in the room. For the students that are in the room, Cooper, Riley, Madeline, Clement, Nora, Christian, to the middle schoolers in the room, the high schoolers in the room, our college students in the room, and to my own Angelito and Celine at home, and to the millions of students that will benefit from our collective work, this is our moment. We are doing this for you. We got into this profession to give you opportunity. We serve so that you could have a brighter future. So students, today, with a greater sense of urgency, we recommit to fulfill the promise to support you as you seek the education that'll give you the tools to enjoy life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Let's get to work. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.